Hi,
Hello,
Stephen. Hey,
hello.
hello.
How you
How are you?
doing? We can jump in there. I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
The primary condition that I use medical cannabis to treat is fibromyalgia, which is obviously a chronic pain condition. So the prescription I have is to treat primarily the pain of that. But I do have a number of other conditions that are in the background as well that I find medical cannabis extremely helpful with. And they are ADHD, dyspraxia, PTSD, FSH, muscular dystrophy, and all the symptoms obviously that go with fibromyalgia too, like IBS and insomnia and all the other
Yeah,
list of complaints that come with it. So
there's a lovely long
busy.
list. I
Yes,
mean,
yes, yeah,
I can definitely relate to it, also being a fibromyalgia sufferer myself. So
yeah,
the insomnia part is just awful. That's why I'm such a night owl.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely. And
So
how,
yeah, yeah. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
no, you're going to say, sorry.
Yes, the insomnia aspect is a real pain because of what if you don't get control of the insomnia, then everything else just spirals out of control. If you're tired, then the fatigue hits in. Once the fatigue hits in, then the pain hits in, and then the pain with the anxiety, and it's just everything just spirals off. It's like
Yeah,
trying to stop a runaway train sometimes if you're not in control of it.
yeah, and it leads to that kind of level of irritability as well. I find it's so difficult to focus on work when you're so tired, but you're tired because of the pain, and the pain's making you even more tired. So it's just that constant spiral.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's almost like what I've actually read in self-help groups and lots of other kind of fibromyalgia groups is that a lot of people actually describe some of the brain fog and some of the kind of cognitive issues that they have very similar to actually the symptoms of ADHD. But in actual fact, if you've already got ADHD, then fibromyalgia just basically amplifies those symptoms that you already have. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, but there are ways of getting around it. There are ways of kind of like training yourself.
yeah.
First tip is always to be kind to yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's not our faults at the end of the day. It's just how it is.
So I so agree. I think the brain fog was just probably the hardest part of like.
Mm.
I mean, I don't. My worst one was the simple things of trying to find a control and realizing I've left the control in the fridge for some reason.
Yep, yep, yep. That I've spent my life doing that. Those kind of things to the point where you have to put things in the same place all the time, and you really concentrate on what you're doing, and walking into rooms and going, why am I in here? And then you're thinking, but
Yes.
I'm not in my 80s. Why am I thinking like this?
Yeah.
you know. And it is purely down to fatigue. That's for fatigue affecting how our brain functions, and everything just spirals out. But obviously, then as the conversation will go on, I can start to tell you about how medical cannabis really helps with those things, and the fact that
Yeah.
I can explain to you the fact that insomnia is not a problem for me anymore. I first started suffering with symptoms. It would be probably about the beginning of 2015. And I wasn't actually properly diagnosed, potentially about a year and a half after that. But then it was only kind of a part diagnosis because the diagnostics on the diagnosis changed at the time.
Yeah.
But then I've had the diagnosis confirmed by a number of consultants afterwards. I also, as well as what kind of triggered it, or was certainly a catalyst, was a car crash. So I've also had to go through a causation car crash case for that.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of a medical analysis on myself and my life, put it that way. So lots of medical experts, but I've definitely got fibromyalgia. I know that for a fact, and now I know what kind of caused it. There we go.
I think the struggle can be also going through that diagnosis stage because you have this problem, but you haven't had the name to kind of for you to get to that conclusion of okay,
Yeah,
this is now what I've got. Now, how can I treat this? How can I
yeah,
sort of effectively try and get back on with my life? So
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing with fibromyalgia. It's kind of one of these things that they diagnose once they've ticked off the list of everything else. You've got to go through all that diagnostic period. It takes a long time to the point where, I mean, there's an average of something like 3 to 5 years to get a fibromyalgia diagnosis because of obviously, getting all these tests, getting all this information, making sure everything is ticked off. And if you have any other underlying issues, then it can obviously become even more confusing. And then once you get to the end of it, you actually realize that there's not actually much choice for treatment. And as we're going on, bodies like NICE are kind of constantly saying, well, this treatment is not suitable and that treatment is not suitable, leaving practitioners and physicians with even less and less to prescribe us.
Yeah.
NICE have just deemed that the usual suspects of kind of like pain relief are now not suitable for chronic pain. There's also aspects of like ME and chronic fatigue syndrome where they're nice to turn around and saying exercise is not suitable for that. I personally believe that fibromyalgia could be next, that exercise is not suitable for it. It certainly is not suitable for me. It puts me into a lot more pain, and I was extremely fit and healthy before I got ill, and I still am fit and healthy, still strong, still keep myself fit, but I cannot exercise. It just would not work for me at all.
I can definitely can relate to that. So, medical cannabis coming into the picture then for you, how has that now changed your life?
Well, medical cannabis coming into the picture for me changed my life immeasurably. Not only the fact that it gave me, prior to using medical cannabis, I was using black market cannabis. And the reason why I was using black market cannabis is because I'd literally exhausted all my potential pain relief options prior to even getting fibromyalgia. A year before, I'd started suffering symptoms of FSH muscular dystrophy in my right shoulder, and I had a lot of nerve damage from my shoulder kind of like dropping and falling forwards because of the wasting away of muscles around my shoulder blade. So I had a lot of nerve damage and stretching across the brachial nerve. So I had gone through 6-7 months of pain relief and painkillers and trying all sorts of different things of anti-inflammatories, GABA drugs, opiates, SSRI, antidepressants, all these things. And that was just side effect after side effect after side effect, and they weren't working for me at all. So by the time I actually got fibromyalgia, I'd already started turning to black market cannabis because I had nothing else left. I found that initially to be a great relief, but it was very much like a kind of a roller coaster ride for relief. It's a very up and down. And reason being is because the consistency, the quality, the strain of cannabis, where it was coming from, it was constantly changing. So I had no regular kind of input of consistency or any quality. So it was beneficial. It did help, but it was very limited. And I didn't realize that at the time because when cannabis was then legalized for medical use in November 2018, I then had to wait a period of time for clinics to be available and also prices to be realistic, because there was no way in hell I could pay £1,000, £1,500 for 30 grams of cannabis. I was surviving on benefits. So when that changed, I was keeping an eye out on what was actually going in relation to the industry and how things were changing. And I noticed that there was a clinic up in Manchester that was actually being run through the beaches by a pain consultant. I contacted them. I had a chat, I qualified, went to my GP, got the referral, got my appointment with my consultant. He raised the prescription. 2 days later, the prescription was at my door. And there I had a big pot of Bedrocan floss in front of me, 30 grams. And there I had this legal cannabis. And not only was that basically this kind of a chance for me to potentially get hold of control of my illness, but I just basically alleviated all that pressure and stress of having to use the illegal market. All that was gone. I now had a legitimate medicine in front of me that I knew was going to work, that there was almost like being believed that this was going to help. But then at the same time as having given that freedom as the powers that be saying, it's okay for you to use this and we're not going to break down your door. We're not going to criminalize you. And not only that, is that now this couldn't be used as a weapon against me in going through family court and trying to gain further access to my children, which it had been. I'd just been legitimized. Everything that I'd saying had just been legitimized. So the relief in relation to the psychological aspect of just having that legal prescription was immense for myself. Then we talk about the symptom relief. Then we step into the kind of like this is something special. I mean, I had my doubts about the difference between medical cannabis and black market. I had my obvious doubts and think, is this going to work? And it did. It worked straight away. I noticed a huge difference. And then the consistency of sticking to that amount, the consistency of the quality and consistency in what was actually in the product or the medicine I was using over time, I could see was just waning more and more and more benefits. And it's literally like I can describe fibromyalgia at the time to be an active volcano spitting magma and hot ash everywhere and destroying everything in its wake, really grumpy and aggressive and angry looking thing, to the point where cannabis actually started to quiet down that volcano and turn it into almost like a dormant state where things could start to grow back again. You know, the island that say the volcano was on could start to flourish, life could come back. And that was exactly what it was like for me. I started to come back as all this pain went back, as all the stiffness and the fatigue and the nausea and the insomnia and just went back and kind of like regressed almost, this quiet, dormant state. I could start rebuilding. My body could start recovering as functions started to come back into place, and it literally felt like it, like aspects of my body or even my mentality had been switched off. It started to kickstart back into process again as everything in my body started to balance. After about 3 months, I really felt the full extent of what it could do for me. At that point, I kind of was thinking, looking at myself, and I was using a gram of cannabis flower every single day of like 20% THC cannabis flower, which, you know, we're told is extremely strong, or in some aspects of society telling us are very, very dangerous. I have never felt so balanced in my life. I felt mentally balanced. I felt physically balanced. I felt like I was healing. I was getting better. I felt like I could manage, and I was in control of my illness, that I still had space to be me. I started to be creative again. I started to do more. My children noticed a huge difference in my energy levels, what I could do, how I was reacting. Everything was just got better, and it has continued to be that way. And I literally say, in relation to treating or dealing with fibromyalgia, cannabis is the best move I have ever made in my life, and I do not have a zero regret at all. And the industry, how I've been treated, the medication itself, how it's been delivered, I literally can't fault it. Considering this is a new thing and everyone is starting these new steps, you know, the industry and the people, the professionals within it, they really do deserve a massive pat on the back for getting us this far and getting this medicine out to people like me, because this is seriously life-changing stuff.